Hello, Facebook, YouTube, the day of Gabriel, the messenger, the archangel of God is my strength. That's what it is. Do it about Gabriel. No, not that God man-eye, people don't even know man-eye. Because darkness likes to hide, and the more darkness hides, the more power and the dark energy that they receive that they can utilize to come against people that are trying to seek after the light, that people are not trying to understand about how I'm exposing these gods and goddesses. Because the more these gods and goddesses are unknown, the more they have power to, continue helping this world get more darker and darker. That you're not understanding. But I wish I can really teach you on that a little bit more. But I want to talk about this. Guy gave me this message about the topic of this message is the reality of the horror story. The reality of the horror story. And the thing is, the horror story is talking about a horrible past. You know what I'm saying? Most people have a horrible past concerning that they experience a traumatic time in their life that may have hindered them to become something in life and become better people, and y'all know all kinds of rapes by the family or friends, abusive mother and father or abusive family member, all kind of bad stories out there, neglect, there's a lot of horror stories out there, and everybody has them in their unique and own way, and certain people have a horror story that that has more details behind that. They experience rape and also experience this or drug abuse, and they and all kind of stuff. A lot of horror stories out there that that piled on pile of more bad things that happened to them. And it's sad that the reality is real. People go through a lot of bad things in life, and it happens. But the question that I want to say to people with a horror story, I want to present is, that I want you to see, and others want you to see, because look, we have to live with people with horror stories. We have to understand that people have been through a lot of bad things in their life. You know what I'm saying? And but we need to understand that people are out there that are facing so much now, and they're approaching they're having more horror stories. You know what I'm saying? The horror story is producing more horror stories and giving people reasons to, of course, live a horrible life. You know what I'm saying? Live a terrible life that that they're never happy, always sad. They're constantly stress, worry, and guilt, shame, defeat, all kind of bad, excruciating things that is going on inside most individuals in our life, and that has traumatized people to not try to excel to become a better person. And I'm just going to testify on my life. As my boy the truth says, I don't have much of a horror story. The only horrible thing that may be somewhat horrible, that my dad left me at the age of 7, I think, somewhere in there, 7 or 6. And my mom, raised me pretty much by herself. But a lot of people got that story. I mean, that's not considered a horror story. But by the grace of God, I'm saying, I'm living today. I'm living by the grace of God. I mean, but you know, the thing is, I stay around people that has a lot of horror stories. You know, I used to stay down the road to the projects, you know, Rogers Project. Shout out to Rogers Project. I stayed down the road from it. I didn't stay in it, but I stayed down the road from it. You know what I'm saying? I was around people that has horror stories. You know what I'm saying? And you know, the thing is, my friend Undine, and you know, I know people that went through a lot, and I've seen people that has horror stories. You know, been around them, and it's a terrible position in life that if you're coming into this life that you want to have life, but the horror story, you know what I'm saying, is now telling you is telling you what you supposed to think life is supposed to be about. You know, this horror story, unfortunately for a lot of people, is telling you, you're letting this story tell you what life is all about. Now I'm going to ask a question on that idea, because everybody think we're supposed to continue this horror story supposed to be a to be continued because you went through a horror story. I'm asking a question. How can the past, is the past is supposed to dictate the future? I mean, this is the question I want to ask you within yourself, and I pray that you give an honest answer to this. You know, how is the past supposed to dictate your future? You know what I'm saying? And people, look, the past is supposed to be, according to reality, this is Matt Johnson, reality, in the past. That's reality. A past is in the past. It's not, you know, supposed to be in a future. You know, that's that. But we have the power. God created us with the belief system to have the power to put our past in our future, because it's our choice concerning He gave us that we can take our horror story and continually live it out and live it out and live it out, and you know, and don't realize you make other people's lives horrible. Like if you have kids, you can give your kids a reason to have a horror story. Give them a reason, not saying that, you know, that you will that they have a choice, but because of the life that you live before their eyes, you have gave them an obligation to choose this as an option. Not so much a lip service for certain people, but because of your lifestyle that you think this horror story has to continue. You know what I'm saying? You gave them an option. And the more you are leaning upon continuing your horror story, they are seeing, well, if it's okay for them to continue in this horror story, maybe it will be okay for me to continue on in this horror story. And all of a sudden, if they try to attempt to, I don't know what, horror stories come in all shapes and sizes. We got them all, you know, being a murderer, liar, thief, you know, all kind of sins, you know. These sinful lifestyles, you know, create horror stories. You know what I'm saying? And people have to read them in the newspaper, see them on TV. You know, y'all know about those on AME, you know, hearing people horror stories that a person murdered this many people, raped this many people, you know, so on and so on. These horror stories that are, you know, telling people how to live their life, and they should continually live in it, are creating a destructive path for humanity that nobody is not really genuinely trying to investigate, to question, to how to stop these stories from happening. which Satan, of course, wants you to remain in darkness to do. But I want to ask a question. According to heaven, is the past is supposed to create your future in reality? Now, and if are you going to expect something positive to happen continually following a horror story? I mean, what kind of outcome are you think you're going to have if you continue the wrongdoing that you're doing? What outcome are you expecting is going to benefit you and benefit other people? What are you expecting? You know what I'm saying? Look, it's a false lie. It's a lie. The father of lies, Satan, has convinced you into a lie that nothing good is not supposed to happen in a horror story. How many horror movies you gotta see when at the end they thought they killed whatever that's killing them? All of a sudden something happens that this can to be continued. I mean, horror stories will continue happening, but are we going to do something about this horror story to stop it? My Jesus Christ came and died on a cross to end all the horror stories. He came and became a horrible mess, beating and bloody and bruised, carrying a wooden cross to take our horrible sins and wash them away with his power of his blood. You know what I'm saying? My Jesus came down here to go through a horrific trauma event for every human being, that they can take this cross and follow him out of this horrible stories. To end, say it is finished, to finish the horror stories in our life. He said it is finished. Here is the antidote that will change and better your life. He became sin who knew no sin, that now we can become his righteousness, and we can have a story of righteousness, that we, made a choice, that we decided to follow Jesus, no turning back and no going back to the horror stories, but going to this righteous path, the path of holiness, the path of righteousness. You can make that choice. Don't let people that love horror stories, because I know you you don't listen to King David that told you on Psalms 1:1. Look, get away from the ungodly that keeps talking about horror stories and talking about that they're going to continue following the horror story. Ungodliness, not trying to, lead to righteousness. You know what I'm saying? But wickedness. The horror stories has to stop. You know what I'm saying? And guess what? You need to stop these horror stories, not for yourself, but others around you. People are innocent victims, man. I mean, people, I heard, so many stories of it. People that, getting drunk driving hit innocent victims. Innocent people that are trying to have a life and trying to accomplish something in their daily life. Innocent people, you know what I'm saying, are affected because you want to continue your horror story. You know what I'm saying? That's what's going on. That's the reality of the truth. So are you going to allow the Jesus Christ that came here to end all horror stories into your life to help you get yourself right and help you give you and your children and your family and your friends a better future? Because you cannot have a better future living out horror stories. You cannot. It's common sense. But the thing is, he can wash your heart. If you be honest towards him and true to him, he will do the washing of his word. Can wash your heart, the unforgiveness, the unbitterness that you was created because this person did this horrible thing to you. That, or you went through a horrible, tragic thing here. He can wash away your heart and put love in there, because perfect love, y'all know, casts all fear. And all that fear of, that has got you bound, you can be free from it. If you allow the love of God inside your heart, you know what I'm saying, it will take away these horrible stories and throw them away, and you can have a brighter day future in front of you. All right, I hope y'all got the message of the horror stories. I hope you in your horror stories and start giving God the glory and have a better life. All right, to God be the glory here and forever and ever. In Jesus' name, amen.